Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Psychology of Your 20s, the podcast where we talk through some of the big life changes and transitions of our 20s and what they mean for our psychology. Hello everybody, welcome back to the show, welcome back to the podcast, new listeners, old listeners, wherever you are in the world. It is so great to have you here back for another episode as we, of course, break down the psychology of our 20s. I want to firstly, just before we get into it, thank you all for the love that you have been showing my book recently. If you didn't know, I released a book earlier this year. It's called Person in Progress. And in the last month, I have just been receiving some of the kindest reviews, kindest comments, kindest messages from you all out of nowhere. So I just wanted to give you a formal thank you for just being so kind about this thing that I put out into the world. If you are yet to get your hands on a copy, the book is basically, like the ultimate and extended guide to the psychology of your 20s. So if you like the podcast, I think I can make a fairly certain assumption that you will like the book as well. I will leave a link in the description, but again, you have all of my gratitude. Thank you so much to you all. So for today, I can't speak for you guys, but recently I have been going through, I would say, a few periods of feeling very alien, very unlike myself. It's been this strange experience where the best way I can summarize it is that people will ask me, describe yourself, or they'll ask me what I'm interested in or who I am beyond work or beyond my immediate relationships. And I'm kind of in this situation of grasping at straws at the moment, interests, values, hobbies. I know I have them, but there's this strange wall between me and the things that make me me that means that I feel kind of strange and unoriginal and a little bit bland and very detached from myself. I remember this period right after my last boyfriend and I broke up where I felt very similar. That relationship rocked my confidence so much that for 6 months afterwards, I just felt like I was living outside of my body in a way, and all the things I knew to be true about the person I was felt impossible to feel. I also had moved cities at the time and was trying to make new friends, and I just felt so detached from my spirit. I couldn't hold a conversation. I couldn't really engage with people on a deep level. It seems like this detachment is the best word. This detachment from our sense of self is a fairly common experience for a lot of us in our 20s. I think actually it occurs in quite a cyclical manner. We go through periods of feeling very confident, feeling very alive, and then suddenly out of nowhere, we just don't feel like ourselves anymore. And it kind of serves as a reminder of when we need to reconnect with the deeper parts of ourselves, when we need to re-identify what we care about. But it's also kind of a really scary and uncomfortable feeling. So today I want to dissect and kind of break down that feeling. I want to give you as well a bit of a guide as to how we can feel like ourselves again, or how we can perhaps connect with a newer version of ourselves that's emerging when we are feeling kind of like a stranger in our own life and a stranger in our own body. We are also not just going to talk about things that are run-of-the-mill. Journaling, meditation, spending time doing your hobbies are all fabulous, fabulous ways to combat not feeling like yourself, but I feel like we all kind of know them. I want to just go a little bit deeper and a little bit broader and give you some tips and advice that you probably haven't heard before, some research that you probably haven't heard before, so that this episode is as practical, informative, and as original as it can be, so that it is as helpful as it can be as well. We're also going to talk about why you may be experiencing this at this chapter or point in your life, but also why it's maybe not a bad thing to feel a little bit lost within yourself sometimes. So without further ado, we have so much to cover. So let's get into my guide to how to feel like yourself again. Before we get into the 7+ strategies I have for you today, let me just say the best thing you can do before you implement any new habits, before you try any 30-day reset, any 75 hard program, anything like that. Basically, before you add anything to your already busy life, it's just to understand why this disconnect may be occurring. There is no growth without self-knowledge. And the thing is, this feeling probably isn't an accident. It is stemming from somewhere, something in your life that is creating dissatisfaction or disconnect. The most likely explanations are as follows. Firstly, you may be feeling unlike yourself because you've just become a little bit stuck. You are in a period of stagnation where nothing feels new, nothing feels different. Your days are the same, your routines are the same, and as a result, your sense of self, your soul, whatever you want to label it, this core part of who you are is not being given the opportunity to expand. The thing is, our sense of self is not a static thing. It demands constant evolution from us. Your sense of self, and it's going to sound so silly, like the way I like to describe it, it's kind of like a dolphin. It's kind of like a shark. The moment a dolphin or a shark stops swimming or stops moving forward, you might know this, but they die. And it's kind of similar for your soul. The moment your soul feels like it's not moving forward, it's not experiencing new things, it's not being allowed to grow, it also kind of experiences a similar kind of death. Psychologically, we thrive when we have a sense of forward motion. This is what the psychologist Abraham Maslow, you might know him, called self-actualization. So Maslow, I don't want to say created, Maslow, he founded, not even a worse word to use, basically he's most famous for his hierarchy of needs, and this idea that the very top need that we want to achieve is a state of knowing ourselves and a state of challenging ourselves. That is self-actualization. But he was not the first person to understand this or recognize this. In fact, this core part of human psychology has been understood and practiced by indigenous cultures long before Western psychologists gave it a name. Particularly, Maslow really identified self-actualization as a core priority of the self when he was living with members of the Blackfoot Nation in Canada and in America during the 1930s. And he saw that this community really kind of understood that if a human was to thrive and was to flourish, they needed a sense of movement, of purpose. They needed to be doing things. I think it's really important to talk about where these concepts in Western and modern psychology come from way back when and at their roots, because that is a part of history that is often missed. And it's a part of history that I actually didn't know when it comes to self-actualization and the hierarchy of needs until one of the listeners told me. So very interesting that this idea of forward movement is one that cultures and societies have had longer than we as a modern society could put a name to it. So back to what we're talking about. If you have found yourself stuck in a routine, doing very monotonous things, finding that you've outgrown your environment without realizing it, this may be contributing to a deeper detachment from core parts of you. It could also be that you've kind of been stuck in survival mode for longer than you realize. You may be so focused on prioritizing the busy and urgent parts of your life that there hasn't been much room to slow down and to observe and to learn. If this is the case, no wonder you feel disconnected. It's almost impossible for your brain and your body and your mind to pursue growth and expansion when your nervous system has been hijacked by stress, by burnout, by anxiety, maybe even by trauma. Additionally, another very valid explanation is that you're just straight up overwhelmed by the state of the world and the state of the news and the tragedy of life at the moment. And because of that, there doesn't feel like there's much worth in prioritizing yourself or your well-being when everything else is falling apart and millions of other people are suffering. It's a very difficult line to cross. You want to be empathetic, but I also beg you not to fall into this trap, as awful as the world feels, of not taking care of yourself. It's not selfish to take care of yourself and to feel a connection to the deeper parts of you. It's actually incredibly crucial. Just as a little side note to mention that. Secondly, our second explanation for why we may be feeling a little bit lost from ourselves is that we're just bored. Not only are we stuck, we're bored. And so therefore, we're not very interested in the world and we're not very interested in our own development. Now, this boredom and this apathy can sometimes take years to take a hold, and you don't really realize how just simply uninterested in life you are until you have a moment, perhaps like the one you're having right now, where you realize like, hey, I don't even know what it means to feel like myself anymore. I don't even know who I am. If someone asked me, I wouldn't know how to answer. This also, of course, has a bit of a clinical name. We know it as depression. Feeling like you don't know yourself, feeling uninterested in life, feeling unmotivated is a large sign, symptom, criteria for a diagnosis with either a minor or a major depressive episode. If that's the case, yes, you will still get something out of this podcast, but you'll probably get more out of seeing a therapist who can really, get to the core of your own individual issues. So I would encourage you to see that out as well. The final explanation has to do with you are not living a life in line with your values. That is why you don't feel like yourself. This matters so much more than we think. Our values, although we probably, I don't know about you, I don't think about them day to day. They are still there and they are my compass. And if we throw out the compass, if we ignore the compass, we're obviously going to get very, very lost. If you really value creativity and curiosity, and yet you're doing something in your life that is very systems-based, or you're working a job that doesn't really allow you to express yourself and you don't have an outlet elsewhere, you're not going to feel like yourself, are you? If you value the outdoors and you value adventure and, it's been a while since you've hit the road, same thing. How I explain this is like taking an animal out of their natural habitat and expecting them to thrive. Taking a human away from their values and expecting them to feel like themselves. It never works. And when you take yourself out of environments or situations that reflect your values, when you don't have opportunities to live your values, you are not going to feel amazing psychologically or mentally, emotionally, even physically. So these are the three major explanations for this feeling. Regardless of which one you relate to more, maybe you relate to all of them, the path back to yourself really involves a simple process of A, remembering what you care about, B, remembering what you like about yourself and what you like about being alive, and C, finding ways to practice that as much as you possibly can so that the gap between you and your truest, purest, highest self gets smaller and smaller. Let's talk about how to do that exactly. I will say some of these strategies may sound a little bit woo-woo, a little bit, enlightened, but I promise you they work. I promise you there is science behind that. And also, what do you have to lose? If you're feeling very lost, I don't think it can get worse than that. And here's a hard truth, if you're at a point of wanting to change, well, that's not just going to happen by thinking about it. You've got to try things that you haven't tried before, and you have to try things that maybe you don't think that will work and be surprised. So we're going to start with this first exercise. If you want to feel like yourself again, you have got to identify, even just loosely, what you mean when you say yourself. Who are you? What does that look like? What does that feel like? What does that version of you behave like? You have to perform a bit of a identity reevaluation. There's actually heaps of ways to do this. You're in luck. And it's not as hard as it sounds, but the best exercise that I found to do this is something that I call the identity inventory. And it basically just asks you to really just put a spotlight on yourself for a second in a way that you're not used to. Sit down and write out 10 phrases, 10 words that reflect different parts of your identity. Do an inventory. These can be formal roles. So you could say, of my 10 words, I am a teacher, I am a student, I am a mother, whatever. Personal traits, I am an optimist, I am an introvert. Passions, I love nature, I am a writer. Or it could be relational roles, I am a friend, I am a good daughter. Think of it as like listing the different hats that you wear in your everyday life, the parts of you that are going to show up in different situations, in different relationships and moods that all kind of come together to create your sense of self. Some of these things can also be aspirational, things that you haven't quite achieved yet, but which you know will be in your future and that which, you really want to have happen and that you're working towards. So, for example, I actually did my identity inventory the other day when I was writing this episode, and my list includes things like podcaster. It includes things like writer, extrovert, explorer, empath, sister. And when I write these words down, yes, they might just be words, but altogether they create kind of a unique vision, a unique kind of, a unique board, a unique mood board, I guess, splattering of who I am that makes it easier to live that truth. For example, sometimes I feel kind of distanced from the creative side of me, but I know when I'm not doing something creative, I feel less like myself. And so having that word on this list forces me to basically acknowledge like, hey, if this is how I see myself, I also have to actively express this and I have to actively work on this side of me. Your identity is not just made of words, although there are words on this list. It's made of actions, it's made of doing, it's made of behaviors. At your center, how do you see yourself? Who are you? What parts of your identity feel valuable to you? What are you neglecting? How can you act in a way that aligns the part of you that feel important more towards yourself and that distances you from the behaviors that perhaps aren't reflecting this core inventory of pillars, or I guess the core foundation of how you see yourself. Secondly, as important as it is to, of course, identify what areas you need to love more or need to prioritize more, it's also important to identify the things that you are doing just because you feel like you have to do them. These small choices chip away at our sense of self day after day if we're not careful. It is so easy to say, okay, well, I'll say yes to this thing at work because no one else will, or I'll do this kind of exercise because it's apparently good for me, or, I'll hang out with this person even though I really don't enjoy that company because I feel a sense of loyalty and I should. I'll post on LinkedIn or social media because that's what I should be doing. Doing things purely out of obligation rather than out of an actual sense of choice and a desire to do them is a subtle form of self-abandonment that over time accumulates and means that you feel more and more disconnected from that compass that should be at the center. When we repeatedly act out of shoulds rather than genuine desire or personal values, our sense of autonomy is very quickly eroded. This disconnect between what we do and what we want to do and who we are, I guess, it's what psychologists call incongruence. It's a mismatch between the self we project and our true self. Carl Rogers suggested, he's a very famous psychologist, you've probably heard me mention him before, he was the one who suggested that this incongruence is what creates a great deal of psychological distress in the modern day human. There was a 2016 study in the journal Motivation and Emotion, and it found that when participants were given the opportunity to do something they wanted to, the way they wanted to do it, versus doing something out of pressure or guilt, of course, naturally they reported being overall more happy at the end of the experiment when they had the choice to guide their own behavior versus those who were made to do something out of obligation. It wasn't just that they were less satisfied with their experience in the experiment, they were less satisfied about their life in general. A lot of them gave much more pessimistic outlooks about their life, the life that existed beyond the lab, having done that experiment. So those choices, although they might feel quite, innocent, over time, when you continuously do things that no longer serve you, you do risk becoming a bit of a stranger to yourself. I think it's also the right time to point out another central point here. Sometimes getting back to yourself isn't about adding more to your plate. It isn't about adding more to your life, but thinking about what you can subtract. Imagine how much time we would have for ourselves if we were a bit more selfish and just said no more, and we said yes only when we really wanted to. It's a wild thought for some of us, especially if you're a people pleaser, especially if you have a really ingrained sense of obligation to family or to friends, especially if you think that saying yes will make you more successful and saying no will make you a pill to work with. But who benefits from you continuously saying yes when you don't want to? Who is getting something out of that? Because it's not you. It's someone else. It's other people. It's society at large, whatever you want to call it. But you are not being served by that decision. My third tip for us today is more of a daily exercise, and it's one that I personally do. I have spoken about it on the podcast before. In your journey back to yourself, it is so valuable to set intentions for your day every single day that relate to what you want to get out of that next 24 hours. Let me explain the premise behind this. So recently you may have seen a TikTok of a girl who basically said that every day, the moment she wakes up, she asks the universe, show me how good it can get. Show me how good it can be. And when she does that, she reports almost every day at the end of the day, she reflects back and she's had like the most amazing 24 hours. The reason why is that your thoughts about your situation and your life shape how you view opportunities, how you view good days, how you view bad days. They shape how you behave, which in turn shapes your reality. We can do this same exercise, this same thing to reconnect with ourselves by setting self-directed intentions. Like today, I'm going to go only where I feel I can find joy. Today, I'm going to really listen to myself. Today, I'm going to say no more than I say yes. Today, I'm going to let the universe show me where I need to be. I know I'm going to have a great day. I'm going to be excited by life. Today is going to be excellent. I'm going to feel amazing. Those are just some examples of those affirmations or intentions that you can set. Psychologically, this also taps into a concept called priming. This is the idea that what we focus on, especially when our mood is really malleable, like at the start of the day, that can shape how we interpret the world around us. Two people can be experiencing the exact same situations, but if one of them has an intention that they're going to only engage with things that align with them and the other person doesn't have an intention like that, how they finish the day is going to be very different. So basically, setting a daily intention shifts your cognitive filters. You don't see everything that sucks. You focus on the areas where you can expand. You focus on the areas that you want to and the areas that make you feel good and that make you feel more like yourself. So the world does start to reflect what you want to see, and because you're being more intentional, you also get to be more in touch with what you actually want, because that's the only way that you can actually express or set an intention is if you have a desire for a certain outcome in the first place, which as a consequence means you have to have better communication and be better able to listen to your internal desires. This is our starting point. And I know all of these tips have been very, thought-based exercises, thought-based activities. Enough of that. We're done. We're done with that. We're done with the thinking component. We're going to move on to the doing component. We're going to move on to the fun side of this episode. So if you want some practical things that you can do right now, right at this moment, in the next 24 hours, in the next 7 days that aren't going to feel like a chore, stay with us. We're going to talk about all of that and so much more after this short break. So there is this common saying, perhaps you've heard of it, How you spend your days is how you will spend your life. How you spend your days will also determine how you feel about yourself. Spend your days, glued to your phone, or, your weekends kind of doing the same thing. You're going to feel very one-dimensional because all you're doing is passively consuming or passively kind of following a routine that was laid out for you. If you spend that same time making things, exploring, pursuing goals, looking up at the world, I guess, therefore, you as a part of the world is going to feel more expansive and, just rich in experience. It's not just thinking exercises that are going to get you back to yourself. Experiences are going to do the same for you as well, starting with your weekends. Here is how I think a typical weekend goes for many of us. Saturday, you sleep in, maybe you see a friend, then maybe you go out drinking or you do something in the evening. And then Sunday, you're so tired from the week before, understandably, and also maybe from the night before that you don't really do anything. Maybe you do some chores, then the Sunday scaries hit, and that's it. It's Monday again. Typically, it is the same stuff every weekend, and then it's over. No wonder we feel so disconnected, because you have nothing to actually connect to, nothing to look forward to in your free time. So here is how you are going to reprogram your weekend. Firstly, you are going to choose one day of your weekend, and it's going to be a should-free day. No, I should do my chores. I should go to the gym. I should see this person. None of that. This day is for you. You are going to go where your feet want to go, where your heart wants to go. Your only should for that whole day is to get out of the house and do something that you normally wouldn't. That's it. Leave the house. Experience something other than your day-to-day. That is your only should. The reason this is so important is because new and novel experiences that we feel intrinsically motivated to perform stimulate the brain's reward centers and promote a sense of expansion, but also openness to new experiences. I think as well, you just give yourself the space to breathe and to be present in the moment that is perhaps not available to you when you're working, when you're stuck in the monotony of the day-to-day. When you actually have an open perspective and an open mind towards your weekends and you want them to be expansive days for you, you have more opportunities for happiness and to feel joy and to feel hey, this is a good life and this is a good feeling. And when you feel that way, when you feel relaxed and open to new experiences, that also signals your nervous system that it's safe, all is calm, you relax for a second. And that's when you can really hear the call of your true self better, when you're no longer in survival mode, when you're no longer kind of crowded out by urgency and busyness. Alongside this, I want you to create a bucket list. And yes, we have talked about this before. And you know why it's come up in a few episodes is because it is so darn important as an adult to have things to look forward to and to have ambitions that have absolutely no purpose other than that they make you happy. Remember when we were a kid and we would make our summer bucket list and it would be have a sleepover, make s'mores, go to the amusement park, lemonade stand. We need to bring those back as people in our 20s and 30s and beyond. We need to bring back adventure. Also, it means that when you have one of those days of being ugh, I don't know what to do. I feel bored, but I want to do something. Instead of just wasting your time thinking about which fun thing to pick or trying to search up and find or seek out inspiration, you have your list. You have your bucket list. You don't have to waste any time. You go out and you make new memories. And in those moments, you get to see yourself in different spaces, different environments, different situations, learning kind of who you are on the job, I guess. One thing on my bucket list right now that I think I'm going to do when I'm in Chicago later this week is the 12-hour walk challenge. Side quest here. I recently read this book. It is called, actually very aptly, The 12-Hour Walk. And in it, the author, he is a professional endurance athlete. He talks about this personal experiment that he thinks we should all do, where when we are feeling disconnected from ourselves, when we are feeling a bit lost, you need to commit to walking for 12 hours straight, alone and in silence, with nothing but your thoughts through your city or through a city, wherever you are. And during this 12-hour period, you can stop as much as you want. You can take breaks. You can sit down. You could literally walk for an hour and then like sit in a park for the 11 hours. But you can't be on your phone. You can't listen to music. You have to just be with your thoughts. And obviously, yes, you can sit for 11 hours. The idea is that you don't typically do that. He wants you to keep walking and keep moving forward. And he argues that this is a really easy way to reset, I guess, your spirit, because you have to face so many internal fears and doubts and be alone with your thoughts and notice more about the world that we are kind of unable to do on our day-to-day and in our day-to-day life. It's also just, again, an adventure. So people apparently like finish this walk feeling like an immense sense of purpose, an immense sense of direction. It's apparently very profound. So I'm going to try it and I will report back. I think you should also try it if you're feeling that's an inspiring idea to you. If you have any sense that seems like something fun that you should do it. Obviously, the 12-hour walk is something that you have to do alone. But there are probably a lot of things on your bucket list that would be better with other people. And yes, whilst spending time alone is vital for reconnecting with yourself, if you feel disconnected, please don't allow that to make you withdraw from your friends anymore or self-isolate. I get it when we feel bored, when we feel stuck in our lives, when our self-esteem is deflated. Sometimes the last thing you want to do is have to conceal that actively from your friends. The last thing you want to do is be social. Social withdrawal is a very common coping mechanism when we're dealing with a sense of identity disruption or when we're not feeling like ourselves. Often because it takes a lot of effort to be socially present, but also because we think more time alone automatically means more time to find ourselves. It's actually quite the opposite. It often results in a further exaggeration of depressive symptoms, a further exaggeration of loneliness, a further exaggeration of dissatisfaction. It's this weird behavior that does make us feel a little bit okay in the moment, but actually often ends up worsening our situation. Whilst I'm very aware that this urge can be very hard to fight, especially if it's connected with a mental health disorder, when you feel yourself slipping into this self-isolation, social withdrawal pattern, I want you to remember the findings of this particular study. The study is from 2014 and it's titled Mistakenly Seeking Solitude. And in it, these researchers looked at the experiences of over 1,000 individuals who, when they were given the opportunity to engage with another person, were either encouraged to lean into the situation or they were told that they could do whatever they wanted to. So they could engage or they could not engage. It was up to them, basically, in the second situation. What they found was that those who were encouraged to talk to someone, who were encouraged to sit with them, to engage with them, they reported much higher levels of connection, positive mood, and they left feeling happier, despite the fact that initially a lot of them thought it was going to be a hassle. A lot of them didn't actually want to engage with this other person in front of them. They thought it was going to make their mood worse. The opposite was the case. Interacting with others, even if it feels like it's going to be agitating, often ends up making us feel better. So if you want to feel more aligned, it is time to start seeing your friends again. It is time to start planning fun outings. It is time to know your neighbors. And if you really want to go one step further, if you have time, it's time to start volunteering. If you feel disconnected to yourself, volunteering is a very easy way to get back to that version of you who you respect and who you enjoy. This might sound controversial, but thinking about yourself all the time is probably making you like yourself a lot less. It's this thing called the self-absorption paradox. Higher levels of self-focus and self-awareness can actually increase levels of psychological distress. The more you try to connect with yourself, the more you try to investigate your behavior, The more time you spend with your thoughts and your thoughts alone, the less happy you're actually going to be. This was the situation that I found myself in last year. I spent so much time being like, all right, I'm just going to sit at home and I'm just going to think about my situation and I'm just going to examine my behavior. And if I think about it enough, I will come up with a reasonable explanation that will make this all go away. The moment that I decided to just instead direct that attention that I was putting on myself towards something and someone who needed me and that was bigger than me, the better I felt. For me, that was volunteering with animals. I started fostering dogs. I started doing rescue runs for local animal shelters where you basically fill your car full of dogs that are from kill shelters, and you drive them across state lines or to other areas that aren't kill shelters. And in those moments, I felt more like myself than I had felt in a while, because the focus wasn't on me. It was on someone who needed that attention more than I definitely did. Doing something for others. It's so important and it's so valuable. And I think as a society, it's something that we often neglect, especially when we are, told to be very individualistic and told to be very self-focused. But I know this is going to sound ironic. For this final tip, I am actually going to redirect the attention back onto ourselves once more, despite that whole speech about, doing more for others. I know it's ironic, but I do think that this final tip is equally important and bears mentioning. If you want to feel more like yourself again, you need to set a big goal for yourself that has nothing to do with your professional identity, nothing to do with external validation, nothing to do with getting ahead or anything like that. What I mean to say is that it is important that each of us has some kind of a goal. Yes, we may have a broader goal that is very visible, but it's also important that we have a private goal that we want to accomplish, that we want to meaningfully work towards silently, day in and day out. Setting a deeply personal, non-performative goal, one that is detached from social or professional approval, can really restore a fragmented sense of self because it engages you with your intrinsic self. When we pursue something for the sheer joy of mastery or expression or the joy of the behavior, when we do that, we reestablish autonomy over our time, over our identity, over our actions. This is a form of what we call autotelic behavior. Autotelic. This is a form of autotelic behavior, which is basically a kind of behavior that engages with the flow of the behavior for its own sake. It's something that really nourishes our own internal compass. It's something that really allows us to understand what we want, what we care about, and it fosters something called self-integration. Basically, self-integration means that day by day, our behaviors align more with who we want to be until we feel like we are a more enlightened, higher version of ourselves. I think also the ultimate goal of this is that it builds trust in yourself as well. Often when we feel detached from who we are and we don't know who we are, we don't trust ourselves to get back there, and we don't trust ourselves in general. We don't think that we are capable of achieving what we want to achieve. We don't think we're capable of getting back to ourselves. We don't trust that we can take care of this problem or any problem for that matter. But when you set a goal and you work for it just invisibly, just in your own life, just for your own sake, you silently say to yourself, hey, we are able to go after things that we care about. We are able to achieve things that we care about. You can trust yourself. You can trust that you are going to be true to your word. Here are some examples, because I know sometimes they're hard to think of. Writing a novel that no one knows you're working on. Training for a solo hiking trip. Growing like a balcony garden just from scratch, just because you kind of want to. Creating art that you're never going to post anywhere, you're never going to sell, you're never going to put online is another amazing one. These activities, really connect us with ourselves, and they bring our idea of ourselves, the one that we have in our mind, in line with how we're acting and how we're behaving. I think we could all benefit from a challenge as well. When was the last time you challenged yourself? This right here, this moment where you're questioning a lot about who you are, is a great opportunity. Again, what do you have to lose? There's so much more that you can gain. And these new experiences are just a really amazing way to kind of find the path back to yourself, even if you are kind of blind for the first part of the journey. Just doing things, putting yourself in spaces where there is the opportunity for self-discovery, even if you feel a bit unsure, is really the only way to get through this. So as we wrap up this episode, I just want to say, yes, all these tips are important. I'm sure that they will be helpful. I hope they will be helpful, but just have some grace with yourself. There are a lot of people in this with you. There are a lot of people in this world who feel very similar and don't know who they are, because I think modern society and modern culture has made it very hard to spend time with ourselves and to spend time on our wants and our needs and not our shoulds. I think that's where this disconnect really comes from. We can't really hear the internal voice that's within all of us that is able to communicate with us and tell us what we want. And we feel that emotionally, and we're feeling that mentally and psychologically. So any kind of activity that just takes you out of what you think is expected from you, or takes you out of your routine or a stagnant mindset and just into a new space of novelty, like that is particularly luminous and it's particularly incredible. And I really do think it will help you out. So I'm sending you a lot of love and a lot of empathy. I know how difficult it can be to not know who you are right now, but there is definitely a way back. Send this episode to someone else who you think might benefit from it if you yourself benefited from it. Make sure that you are following us on Instagram at That Psychology Podcast, and leave the podcast a 5-star review wherever you are listening, particularly on Apple. If you are listening on Apple and you want to leave a little review, those really, really benefit us and help the show grow and reach new people, especially if you feel like there was value in this episode or any others. I very kindly ask that you consider it. Also, my book is still available and I will leave a link in the description. Make sure you check that out as well. But until next time, stay safe, be kind, be gentle with yourself, and we will talk very, very soon.